Good morning, and thank you for having me here today. I'd like to thank KDI, certainly it's a fabulous facility, and of course the university for all the hospitality yesterday, and Columbia Business School. But I'm particularly grateful to Mr. Shim, because the day he showed up at the Inter-American Development Bank, which we call the IDB, early this year, a number of my colleagues were traveling. And so I had the great fortune to receive him, and then very soon afterwards I received an invitation to come here and present today. So I would like to begin by telling you a little bit about the Inter-American Development Bank's Opportunity for the Majority Initiative. First, I should say that, let me just tell you what the IDB is, as we call it. The IDB is the main source of multilateral financing for Latin America and for the Caribbean. And we approve on average about $10 billion in lending annually. Last year, this figure was more in the order of $12.5 billion. And given the economic crisis we're all experiencing now, the multilateral banks are what we call counter-cyclical. When economies tank, public finance institutions boom. And so the demand for our resources in 2009 is expected to be far higher than it has been in previous years. There are 48 member countries located throughout the world. Korea, I'm proud to say, is a member of the Inter-American Development Bank. China joined in 2009. We have countries like India, Japan, the countries in Europe, the United States, Canada, and then there are 26 borrowing member countries, which it says here hold 50% of the voting power. So the regional member countries really own the majority of the shares of the bank, which is different than our partner institutions, particularly the World Bank. The IDB lends money, but it also provides grants. It offers research, advice, and technical assistance. Our clients range from central governments to city authorities and small businesses. The Opportunities for the Majority Initiative is trying to apply sustainable market-based strategies to bring the benefits of economic and social development to the majority of the population in Latin America and the Caribbean. By majority, the IDB refers to 360 million people approximately. This is about 70% of the population of the region who live on less than $300 a month. This low-income sector has not benefited substantially from the region's recent economic growth, and meeting its needs, we think, requires very different and innovative investment approaches. I'm going to skip that one. The Opportunities for the Majority Initiative is encouraging the bank to look at the low-income sector as a market that has strong growth potential and one where many of the essentials have been taken for granted by conventional markets, from healthcare to education, housing, and basic utilities. 70% of the population in this region corresponds to a market of approximately $500 billion in potential purchasing power that is available to be tapped by business models able to package access and quality services at affordable prices. At the Inter-American Development Bank, this initiative has an experienced and full-time staff assigned solely to identify new business models and private sector partners and to steward the main concepts and operations throughout the bank's strategies and operations. The Opportunities for the Majority Office, as you see there, is part of the Vice Presidency for Private Sector and our non-sovereign guaranteed operations. And this is significant because within the private sector group of the Inter-American Development Bank, the traditional private sector loan is a very large loan for infrastructure, typically for infrastructure development or for capital market formation, and is in the order of $70 to $100 million. So setting up an institutional space for this initiative is quite important because it signals to the market, we hope, and certainly within our own institution, that the bank is quite serious about social enterprise and really trying to develop some market solutions and innovate around poverty challenges. The initiative office we think of as an incubator within the bank where we are exploring business-led and collaborative solutions to poverty challenges throughout Latin America. The goal is to promote and finance an emerging business model that seeks to engage poor and low-income communities together with private business in the development and delivery of quality products and services, and certainly to integrate the low-income sector into the productive sector. To initiate this activity, the office was established in 2007, in the middle of 2007. And the second half of that year, to really launch our work and to try and understand the business models, we undertook a number of important research activities. With SNV, Netherlands Development Organization, we carried out a mapping in 13 countries throughout Latin America. And this study was really a groundbreaking effort to understand and to gather firsthand information from over 500 top management executives of large and medium-sized firms that currently work with or are interested in working with base of the pyramid or what we call majority markets. The purpose of this mapping exercise was to try to understand what the current trends, strategies, obstacles, and incentives for working with these low-income markets was, and certainly to source some new business for the Inter-American Development Bank. A second study was conducted by Innovest Strategic Value Advisors. With Innovest, we developed an index of what we call top BOP market performers to really try to establish a correlation between delivering value to the base of the socioeconomic pyramid and delivering value to shareholders looking for opportunities in low-income sectors. To date, there's much anecdotal information that doing business at the bottom of the pyramid is good business, but this exercise was designed to create a business case and to start that process to support this premise. We've conducted additional research over the course of the last year in sectors where we see both demand and great potential for new models, including health franchising. We financed an important information and technology study in Brazil and Mexico because of the applications of cellular technology in particular. We're working on, we conducted an important housing segmentation study to understand housing solutions, and we focused initially on Peru for that. When they set up the office in 2007, the board of directors also approved a special financing facility, which is called the Opportunities for Majority Financing Facility. It's initially capped at $250 million over a 3-year period and supports projects with private sector entities that propose market-based solutions to poverty or development challenges. The operations need to be innovative, they need to be for a specific market, country, or region, and they need to be sustainable and scalable. These are loan or guarantee operations, and they pass through the same rigorous authorization process as a traditional private sector program in our bank. Apart from the dedicated facility, our office is able to leverage assets from the IDB group in order to support our partners in the task of entering these low-income markets. Each operation we finance typically is accompanied by a grant to facilitate needed research, to do some of the modeling or legal or environmental due diligence. We fund or we identify this kind of technical assistance. really to finance what we know is important in building these models. So we're doing market segmentations with our grants. We're doing some of the needed financial modeling. We're looking at some of the demand analysis studies. And we're trying very hard to measure the poverty penalty as well as to measure social impact of the projects that we support. Companies that engage with BOP markets often have to rethink their business models. They definitely need to re-engineer their products or their services and explore new distribution channels. We know now that there is no universal solution. Some business models have already been tested and offer good guidance for future approaches. The initiative is supporting a number of these new projects. Let's see. Private sector managers, as I mentioned, don't understand the exact needs of these low-income customers, so closer engagement with communities is helping to promote joint development of solutions to meet their demands. We're looking at new products and services and how they can be adapted to consumption patterns and financial constraints of these low-income markets. For instance, smaller packaging, prepaid services, and innovative credit models all are working to increase access to the base of the pyramid to essential products and services. We've been including several services in one package. We find this is often a successful strategy to promote low-income communities' access to essential services. The possibilities are very diverse: banking by cellular, telephone, electricity bills that also allow access to credit, and free training and capacity building offered to manufacturers with the purchase of materials are a few of the examples of projects that we're working on. Replicating successful models is an essential part of building transformative projects, and many of the projects we're looking at start as pilots and then have the potential to be scaled up. What we're all trying to understand here today is what is the key to some of these successful enterprises, and what have we learned? And we've learned many things. First, and I share Anthony's premise, that we think that these models have to have both a commercial return as well as a high social return. We are a bank, and we are very much about being a bank. So this is important for that reason, but it's also important because projects need to be strategic within companies. I was telling some colleagues last night at dinner, or some fellow participants, that when I'm meeting companies in Latin America and I'm introduced to the head of their corporate social responsibility department, I'm pleased to meet with them, but I often then return and ask to meet with someone more strategic within the company. If these projects are not, if these business models are not seen from the top down in the management of a company as being strategic, it's very unlikely that they can be sustainable because of their investment resources and because of their skill and their innovation capacity. We're also working always with civil society organizations in these models because of their knowledge of these low-income markets and because of their commitment for serving the poor. And we very much need government participation. It's often local government participation when you get down to the level of a model. But the role of government in policy making and the role of government in terms of their reach and their capillarity into these low-income markets is critical. And the third lesson that we've learned is about platforms. Using government platforms or other installed platforms is essential for breaking the distribution code needed to both do the business modeling and certainly for reaching scale. If you're working with microfinance networks, utility company networks, some of our, in particular, slum upgrading programs, the IDB has financed a number of conditional cash transfer programs, which are welfare programs. All of these are important platforms. Our job is to really assist companies in diminishing costs and logistical barriers to entry into these low-income markets while providing better quality goods and services, certainly for the people that live at the base of the socioeconomic pyramid. There is significant evidence of demand for the approach and for the work that we're doing within the Inter-American Development Bank. Last year, which was our first year of operations, 4 projects were approved for a total of $49 million. In this year, we're working on 20 different project models, and we anticipate that 10 will be approved in 2009. I'd like just to talk a little bit about a good example of a project that was that I worked on last year that was financed, it was approved by our board of directors in the middle of the year in June of 2008. And I think this is an interesting example because not only is it a program that we're supporting, but in its own right it proposes to create an industry around making investments at the base of the socioeconomic pyramid. This is a new venture capital fund. It's called IGNIA. It was launched in Mexico right around June 2008 as well. And it is focused exclusively on developing commercial and socially inclusive enterprises for the lowest socioeconomic sectors. The fund was established by 2 very prominent microfinance pioneers, Michael Chu, who I notice has presented a paper for our conference here today. He was the former CEO of Accion International, which is the largest microfinance network in Latin America. And he's also a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School, where he specializes in base of the pyramid market issues. And the second was Alvaro Rodriguez, who has held a number of senior positions in business, banking, and microfinance. He's also been part of the Accion network. The IDB is supporting the fund with a $25 million loan and a $5 million equity investment from our partner window in our private sector group called the Multilateral Investment Fund. The IDB loan to the IGNIA fund has enabled IGNIA to move forward on its plan to raise a total of $75 million for investments benefiting the base of the pyramid in up to 12 projects throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. To date, they've leveraged nearly $50 million, and they've closed on 3 new investments. The fund intends to focus on investments that are small and medium-sized companies and those whose revenues are less than $10 million, and on firms that operate in the last mile of the value chain. In other words, businesses that provide services directly to consumers. The fund is only concentrating on investments that are directly servicing the lowest socioeconomic sectors. The sponsors believe that such a focus and a specialization is essential. Success in these markets requires understanding in depth a market that places very different values on specific goods and services. For instance, waiting time. In Mexico, certainly, the majority of the population that comprises the BOP, the 70%, are informal hourly wage earners. So waiting time is critical. On the trade-off between price and cash flow, on the time value of money. And these markets have a very different definition for convenience, for efficiency. For these reasons, the sponsors expect that the vast majority of the fund's target investments will be businesses that are tailored from their inception to meeting the needs of these low-income populations. The fund is already targeting investments in healthcare and housing solutions, and it's seeking additional investments in education, nutrition, access to technology, and to basic utilities. The engine for this program and many of the models that I've been working on is microfinance. The fund managers, in particular, and some of the limited partners from the IGNIA fund come from the Banco Compartamos, which is the largest microfinance bank in Mexico. Through this bank, they have a very installed network or platform that I was speaking of to enable and to source new potential business opportunities. IGNIA is using the microfinance platform to source its businesses, and it's really a retail model that they're supporting. The business model needs to be scalable, such that its operating margins increase as the revenues increase, so that businesses quickly generate operating incomes. The premise behind this fund is all about scale, and scale is a key criterion because it permits fast and self-funded growth. The IGNIA Fund expects, in most instances, to build its portfolio companies in a modular manner by funding through a phased rollout the establishment of a modest number of retail outlets, often clusters, consisting of one large and then several smaller outlets in a few cities. Ultimately, the goal is that they will build businesses of sufficient scale and financial performance to access capital markets. IGNIA seeks through its fund to demonstrate to the market that investing in businesses targeting the base of the socioeconomic pyramid can generate significant social and economic returns, and we very much share that premise. You know, in the present world crisis, I think the role of the Opportunities for the Majority Initiative, and certainly the role for social enterprise, is probably more relevant than it ever has been before. If you look at governments around the world, particularly the United States government, we're really placing a premium on trying to protect private business, and we're taking really drastic steps to unfreeze credit markets. This focus, the mass markets of the majority, whether it's in low-cost mortgages or affordable insurance or health coverage, is surging in prominence and really in economic policy. In this context, a business policy that encourages this kind of innovative investment in the mass market, what we call the base of the pyramid, can be a tool to really help achieve some of this needed national stability. Both developed and developing countries recognize now more than ever that their future depends on the ordinary consumer. What the Opportunities for the Majority Initiative and what some of the discussion around social enterprise does is apply this concept to meeting the basic needs of low-income communities. The type of consumer demand that our initiative is addressing and the social enterprise activity that we're learning about today is not composed of luxury cars or condominiums, but basic human needs: access to water, access to street paving, improving incrementally modest homes, obtaining health coverage, or just having access to credit and banking services. Individually, the investments in these sectors may be small, but seen as a whole, they have enormous development and social impact. So I share Anthony's enthusiasm a little bit differently, but I share his enthusiasm that this is really the right time to think seriously and carefully about how to launch social enterprise and what kind of policies we can work with to direct these new innovations at the base of the pyramid. Thank you very much for your attention.